Hi, my name's John, and I run the geography tutor sessions at Geography for You. I also present these mini tutorials on exam questions. I really hope they help you. So let me begin. So in this video, I'll look at how to successfully tackle 6-mark responses which are linked to a resource. In these answers, time is of essence. I'd say you have around 8 minutes to complete this. This includes the bugging of the question, which I'll talk about later on, the interpretation of the resource, working out what's on it, and then actually writing response. So maybe, I don't know, 6 minutes to actually of writing time to get this done. The AO aspect of this, there's two bits. There's AO1, which is the knowledge and understanding of the subject. So kind of theoretical, sometimes evidential, case study type sort of material. And the AO2, in this instance, is the correct interpretation of the resource. The resource here will be a photograph of a coastal area, so it's kind of interpreting the correct geographical features and therefore the processes that kick in. Okay, now there are 3 levels. Level 3, which is the band that you're trying to get, is 5 and 6 marks, and the lower band is 1 to 2, and the middle band is 3 and 4 marks. This question is taken from the 2018 paper, paper 1, and in this instance, which is quite a popular one, there's a photo resource. Okay, so you can see that in front of you. And the question says, explain the physical processes that affect the rate of coastal recession. Okay, so they're expecting you to use the resource and use evidence from that. Now, so BUG is not my system, it's an old system. BUG stands for box the command word, underline the important geographical terms, and then G, which I think is the most important thing, is to go back over the question. I divide that into 2 parts. G part 1 is I would really think about what those key terms means, more of a simplistic approach. And then the G part 2, which again, go back over the question, is to really think about the context of the question, simplify it, work it out. It's really important to bug things effectively. Anything from, your 4 markers right up to your 20-mark responses. Now, once you've done the bugging, you might have had a quick glance at the photograph. You need to get your head into the resource because otherwise you can't do the AO2 aspect correctly at all. So I would go into this and I try to identify the simple stuff first of all. What landforms can I see? Well, I can see, and it tells you there's a cliff, but I'd do a bit more than that. It's a steep cliff, right? And I can see it's made up of certain geology. I can talk about the lithology. I can talk about the rock structure as well, and so forth. I can see there are bedding planes. I can see there are joints, cracks, and I reckon this is made out of limestone. I can also see there's a well-developed wave cut platform. But then as I look more closely, I can see there's a notch, a wave cut notch, which kind of runs over here as well. I can see on the platform there is lots of scree, which is the broken material that's probably come from the cliff. It looks like a similar material. I can see green algae, so I know this gets wet. And even something, when you look at the title, you can see there's some information that's important. It says West Island. What's off the coast of West Island? The Atlantic Ocean. Atlantic Ocean, then you say, fetch. Big waves, wintertime, destructive waves, those sorts of things. So it starts to cascade information. You start to get a framework of things that you could discuss. Then I'm thinking, okay, what processes might be at work? And my revision will have told me, the processes at work. So this is the AO1 thing kicking in now. All right, I've got marine processes, erosion, transportation, deposition, subaerial processes of weathering and mass movement. Now I've got some things to actually write about. And then I'm thinking, okay, so it's not just the sea having an impact on this coastline. Remember, the question is saying, why is it receding? Why is it going back? So there's a whole range of things. I've only got 6 marks to get, 8-minute framework. I can't write about everything, but I would want to talk about a range of things, everything from the processes to geology on this one. Okay. Now, once you've done your bug, I think it's important that you actually plan your response. Jot down a few ideas. Once you're writing, it's very difficult to think of new ideas and you might get yourself confused. So what I would do is pause the video and have a go. Maybe give yourself that 8 minutes. So reread the question, bug it, plan it, type sort of thing. When you do start, try to be direct, explicit. So if you look at this, the question's asking you to talk about physical processes that affect the speed, the rate of coastal recession. When recession is it moving back? We want to use evidence. So you might start by saying, in the photograph, I can see a steep cliff and a well-developed wave cut platform. Once you've done that, you've had a clear explicit link that you've done hit the AO2 immediately, then you kick in your AO1 knowledge and you would explain how that wave cut platform is formed. You talk about the wave cut notch, you talk about the role of the sea, the marine processes, you could kick in information about the potentially big effect, creating big waves, particularly in the winter time, and then you can link into the types of erosion, and then you've got a little bit of sequence kicking in on that one. And if you did that bit well, really well, I think you get into top level 2 because you have a number of ideas actually explored. And then after that, then I would then probably go back to the cliff and talk about there are other processes, like sub-area processes working upon this cliff, freeze thaw, biological weathering, maybe even water infiltration into that top layer of the soil. I can see vegetation at the top there, by the way, and how that might undermine, weaken the cliff, and then you might get, again, mass movement rockfall happening, right? So it's all kind of contributing. Several ideas. I mean, in the top level, I'd say 3 really good explanation points would get you a good mark on this. Okay. Now, on these 2 slides, there are the indicative content for the mark scheme. So as an examiner, I'd read through this to kind of populate my head with the sorts of things I'd expect to see. Personally, I feel the AO2 slide will be more useful to you if I just click onto that. This slide particularly is important because it shows you the evidence and tries to link to some of the processes taking place, and remember, several ideas. Okay, so have a look at this. Again, you might need to pause this because this is a video thing. And again, I suggest, if you haven't already done so, write out a response. Good practice to do that. So, time to mark your response or someone else's response nearby. So how to do this? Well, there are levels, which you can see in the slide. They're very difficult to interpret, even for teachers, even for examiners. It takes a lot of practice to use these things here. So I'll kind of give you some ideas about what you should be looking to do to get the top level. Now, ideally, you being ambitious, you should be aiming to get 5, 6 marks. That's the top level. Now, to do this, it does say in the mark scheme for on level 3, you need a broad range of ideas. They say broad is 3 ideas, so that I would say 3 good explanation points. Not just the 3 good explanation points, you've linked that to key terms, and again, important, you've linked it to evidence, so it's clear that you're talking about the recession of the coastline in the photograph. There's that very joined up thinking there. Level 2, you might have 2 ideas with some supporting detail. Level 1 is likely to be quite brief, maybe some inaccuracies, limited use of terms, limited use of the reference, limited use of the evidence. Sorry. Now, at the end of that, when you've marked this, first of all, try to get the level first. So 1, 2, or 3. Once you feel happy with the level, then decide, is it the upper or the lower part, and go with that mark. And then, like always, most of your teachers tell you to do this, try to identify some strengths of what you've done and then some weaknesses. Okay? Anyway, so pause while you do that, and I'll see you a bit later on. Right, now, what I put up on here, I've grabbed an answer a student did. I thought this is appropriate for this. I've typed it up to keep it anonymous, but also to make the writing a little bit clearer. So what you want to do here is to read through the response, go back to that mark scheme and see what you think of it. So let's have a read of this through. Again, if you want to have a go at marking this by yourself and give your own opinion, pause the video now, and then I'll go through what I think a bit later on. Okay, so I'll read through the response and then I'll give you kind of my ongoing commentary of this. So it says, in figure 3b, I can see a steep cliff with a well-developed wave cut platform and wave cut notch at the base. So there's clear reference to the resource there. It's likely that the waves, and they put in brackets, destructive, caused by the large fetch in the Atlantic Ocean. And they've caused erosion here by hydraulic action and abrasion. So there's reference to terminology. Yes, you could develop that further as well. Scree at the bottom of the cliff reinforces this, and let's use typos here, and is likely to be thrown at the base during high tides and swims. That would be the abrasion aspect. The notch will deepen and eventually part of the cliff will collapse. That would be a rockfall, and it retreats. That's a bit of sequence coming in. So you're not just kind of listing things and just chucking in keywords. Now already it's in level 2, suggesting, because there's several points there, probably level top of level 2 maybe. Need to look at that more closely. Furthermore to this, the cliff is heavily jointed along with bedding planes. They're horizontal like lines, most likely sedimentary rock. This makes the cliff vulnerable to freeze-thaw weathering, where water gets into the joints, freezes, then expands, weakening the cliff, making a rockfall more likely. And then it goes on to say at the top of the cliff there is much vegetation. Here the roots of the plants can grow into the cracks and joints, and they undermine the rock structure and aid the recession of the cliff. Now, I think there are several ideas here. There's decent enough explanation. Remember, 6 minutes of writing, you can't write an essay. You could write an essay on this, to be honest. I think this has got a range of ideas. There's good terminology. There's developed explanations. I would give this level 3, and I would most likely give this a 6. Okay. Anyway, so that's just an example of some of the work that I do. And there are lots of these styles of questions, and there'll be more of these posted on my website. Okay, thank you for listening and watching. Goodbye.